Welcome to the Living Your Career Show, everyone. My name is I'm a director of Blue Sky Careers. The theme of today's show is why resilience can make or break your career. So what is resilience? Why is it so important? Resilience gives us the ability to cope with the ups and downs in life, to bounce back rather than cracking under the pressure, I guess, when we're faced with adversity and complex and horrible situations. Resilience is something that we can learn. Resilience in your career is something that can happen at any time. It could be the interview that you want that you didn't get. It could be the shortlist that you didn't make. It could be missing out on a job offer for a job that you wanted desperately. It could be not getting the promotion that you killed yourself working for. And I guess the one that we're all quite familiar with is dealing with the difficult bosses and the challenging work situations. Today, we learn more about resilience and how important it can be in effective career management. And our special guest is Jo Hassan. Jo is a consultant, public speaker, coach, and author. Her obsession, other than wearing pink, if you don't mind my saying, Jo, is building resilience, vitality, and resilience. And I suppose the great thing about it is, from Jo's perspective, she's written a great book, and it's a best-selling book on Amazon. She has her own creation in that book, and it's called PEPP. And PEPP, and I must get this right, Jo, this trademark model is about purpose, energy, pleasure, and profit, and the combination of all of those in terms of how you build vitality and resilience. Jo is also community ambassador for Are You OK Day? And she, I have to say, hails from the village of Fulmer. Fulmer or Fulmer, Jo?
Fulmer. Fulmer.
And I come from the village of Castle Townsend. And I think what's lovely about all of that is that the two of us come from little places where we have, obviously still have family, Jo?
Yes, yes.
And we talked about how society shapes you, how your upbringing shapes you. And how life is a constant discovery, isn't it? And then we reach who we are today. And today, Jo is going to share with us some of that information. I guess the first question really, Jo, is, having that sense of purpose, is a core foundation for your PEPP model in terms of how you build resilience and vitality. Some of us find that through great jobs. I remember working with Sherry Coutu, for example, in the UK, and she was my chairman and CEO. And I was inspired by her every day. And I think that was the make or break of me in my career. Sometimes I guess it's the great work environments, the jobs that we have. And sometimes it's actually the fact that we just mature and we grow up in life. What for you would you recommend as the first useful step for any professional struggling to find what motivates them in their career?
Great question. Thank you. I think it's having an appreciation and reflecting of times in your career when you have been perhaps particularly successful or particularly unsuccessful at something, where there have been lots of learnings, but where there's an emotional connection. So if you feel that there has been an emotional connection to the outcome of something that you've achieved in your career, then you will, if you listen to what's going on in your heart, you will have a sense of whether you're in the right place, whether you should be doing more of that thing that has given you that little buzz or warmth, or brought tears to your eyes, or brought tears to the eyes of other people. You'll know that you're on track if you have a sort of a warm feeling. I mean, it might sound a bit cheesy, but I think that's the reality.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. I think what you're saying is listen to your gut.
Absolutely, listen to your gut. I'm very big on listening to your gut, yes.
I think we'll be coming to how crazy our lives are and how often we actually overlook our gut because we're too busy doing. One of the things in your book that it really resonated with me was turning on the power of energy to build your vitality.
Yeah.
How important is vitality to building resilience? And how do you kickstart the generator? How do you actually turn it on?
I think to understand energy, even though when we talk about energy, we might be thinking about something fast, to really be able to tune into our energy, we need to slow down and stop and ask ourselves truthfully how we're feeling. For me, I think as we tune into our own energy and we increase our vitality, what that gives us in our journeys of life is it sort of flattens the roller coaster a little bit. You know, we have these big troughs where we go up and down, and there are really high highs and deep lows. And if we can increase our vitality, then when the tough times happen, which they will for all of us, then we will find that we're able to ride them a little more smoothly. And not only ride them more smoothly, but even if it is something really bad, that you can come out the other side quicker. So that's I think what resilience and vitality gives to me is that we're not going to avoid these yucky things that happen. We couldn't avoid the pandemic last year. I couldn't avoid the fact that I couldn't travel back to the village to be with my dying mother. That was an awful time, but I think that the foundation of resilience and vitality that I have created for I could be with my family, even if it was electronically, at a time that was completely ghastly. So I sort of, to use two T words, it was kind of terrible and terrific at the same time. And I think, so looking for the good in even awful situations is something that's really helpful to help us ride out the storms and ride out the deep troughs of the roller coaster.
I think, unfortunately for a lot of us where we're living away from home, I mean, Australia is our home, but you're from the UK, I'm from Ireland. That's the reality for many of us now. And we're really feeling that tyranny of distance and thinking of our loved ones. I mean, your father just turned 90 the other day.
Yes, he was 90 on Monday. So ordinarily that would be a significant life event that I would travel home for. I was there for my mother's 85th birthday. But I couldn't be. Australians are forbidden from leaving Australia right now. So between my sister and myself, I organised a family dinner. We had roast pork, which was what my sister was going to have in the evening. We did a Zoom call. We connected with my aunt, who's my dad's sister. They hadn't actually seen one another for more than a year because she's in the north of England. So we got my cousin to go and pick her up. And so we did a Zoom call between dad and my sister and my cousin and aunt. And then myself and my son were here. And so the six of us were together, which is a fantastic alternative for what is otherwise. You could say, well, it's all bad. Well, it's not all bad. We have to make good in the bad. So we had that situation when we were having dinner, and then I checked in with them. I went to sleep, woke up the next morning, and we did Zoom again while they were having birthday cake their end. So yeah, we made the best of it.
Make the best of a bad situation in a loving family situation. One of the things that's interesting for me is, and I talk to a lot of very stressed, manic professionals who are running and racing. I mean, one of my directors said to me at one point, she said, Roisin, how do we avoid burnout? But I think the thing that I see with a lot of those people is they keep pushing down the pressure. They keep pushing away the stress. They just keep showing up. It's just, take a spoon of cement and just get on with it. But they don't raise their hand for help because there's that sense, if I do, it'll be perceived as a sign of weakness. I'm interested in your thoughts. And if, people in that situation, what advice would you give them?
I would suggest that they try to embrace the notion that far from being a sign of weakness, asking for help is actually a sign of tremendous strength. Now, I know that that might sound a little weird, but quite frankly, you can't just keep pushing, 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 pushing. Something else will give. It might be your own health. It might be the classic midlife crisis, or you might have some sickness, or somebody close to you gets sick. The universe will throw something at you to mean that you have to stop and take stock. So I think I've had a couple of times in my life in the last few years where I have had to learn to ask for help. About 6 years ago, I was probably coming up to 7 years ago, I fell off my foot bike. So foot bike is an adult scooter with bicycle wheels. That's one of the fun things that I like to do for exercise. And I had just kicked 50 kilometres around Brisbane in the Great Brisbane Bike Ride. And one of my kicking friends was on the finish line and waved to see me cross the finish line. And as I took my hands off the handlebars to high five her, I went over the handlebars and broke the top off my arm. Now, I was completely incapacitated for months. Like, I've actually got a plate and 9 pins in my arm now, so I've got a scar and a good story. But what that taught me was I couldn't do anything for myself. I couldn't even open a tin of tuna to feed myself the most simple lunch. I had to ask for help for everything, from showering to dressing to being taken to the physio, just everything. And so that's a very, very grounding situation to be in. And what it made me think about was, gosh, do I have to be actually literally brought to my knees almost to actually understand that we have to ask for help sometimes? And what if we could adjust that to ask for help, not just when we literally cannot manage without it, but when it would improve our health and our well-being to get help sooner. And so that's part of why I have energy in the model, is that we might need to ask for, if you can tune in, listen to your gut and tune in where your energy is at, well, then maybe the help you need is to go to the gym. Maybe you need to go for a long walk with your dog. Maybe you need to go to bed early for a week. Maybe you need to take up meditation, or sit and look at the clouds. Like, we need to be able to tune in to where our energy is at, and know that sometimes the help comes from within, because we change something that we're doing and we adjust our lifestyle to look after ourselves better. And at other times, we simply need to be courageous and ask for help. And that might be at home, it might be in our workplaces. This isn't just something that's about either home or work. It's in both places. Maybe you've been given in your career, you've been given a task that is stretched you to the point beyond what your previous experiences have meant that you could solve, and you need to know to ask for help, or ask someone else where you might get that help from, and see that as a strength, not a weakness, because it's better than not completing the task, or doing it in a lesser way than you otherwise would.
It's interesting because you talk about tuning into your inner self. And I was thinking about self-reflection and, knowing ourselves, knowing our flaws, knowing how we respond to difficult situations, knowing whether we get consumed by difficult situations.
Yeah.
I often wonder, do people spend much time self-reflecting at all? I mean, how do you find the time to actually think about you and what matters to you? Because often, and I get on talking, we talk about it all the time. People are busy, 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 busy. It's young children. It's having to see the parents, going to see the grandparents. Perhaps it's studying. Perhaps it's, there's all sorts of technology. I just have to say it. I mean, we seem to spend our life on technology. I never stop working. I think I'm working harder now than when I was in my 20s.
And that's not uncommon.
And I don't think it's uncommon at all. Self-reflection. How do you find the time for self-reflection? And how might others find the time? And when and where do you find that time to actually think about yourself and prioritize yourself and actually reflect on what matters to you?
I think a really good starting point is making a decision that it's important, and then actually plan for it. If you really are just so busy that you don't have the habit of it already, I suggest deciding that it's important and then planning for it. So maybe that means that you get up 10 minutes earlier, or and you wake up and you actually consciously sit and meditate, take some deep breaths, and think about where you're at. So I do it early in the morning when I first wake up. I do it before I go to bed, before I go to sleep. And sometimes, if you are that busy that you need to create extra habits along the way, well, then maybe you say, okay, well, every time I'm at a red light, well, there's a stop. You're stopping anyway. So instead of trying to be busy with your mind, actually try and take some deep breaths, obviously while being aware of what's going on with the traffic around you, but see the stop sign as a sign to stop. When you're waiting in a queue in the supermarket or wherever, well, then instead of getting your phone out and checking your Facebook, well, take some quiet deep breaths in the queue. That it's but before you do anything, it's about understanding the importance of that and making a decision that it's worth prioritizing. If you truly can't, if you're not in the habit of doing it already, so
I think
take
what you're
moments.
saying,
Small moments are a good start. Doesn't have to be a big amount of time.
and to get yourself into the habit, I think what you're saying is look for the triggers to
Mm-hmm.
get yourself into the mindset to actually start thinking about you. I think so
Mm-hmm.
many of us are in the habit of thinking about everybody else. I always say in my house that I'm like TFG, taken for granted. And I could probably put a few other unsavory letters in there as well, but definitely TFG is one. And I sort of think, because if you don't prioritize yourself, you seriously will find yourself thinking all I ever did was work. All I ever did
Yeah.
was laundry. All I ever did was clean the house. All I ever did was, and you can actually feel that's the sort of thing that can actually wear you down. So I
Mm-hmm.
love that sense of, think about your traffic lights as whatever they may look like, as triggers for you to think about your own self-reflection, what matters to you. One of the things in your book that I absolutely love, Jo, I must get this quote right. You said some actions drain the bucket while others fill it. And
Yeah.
I thought that was absolutely perfect. And it did make me sort of think about taking stock of what matters and creating a do no more list.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yep.
was wondering again, that sort of thing for busy executives. What is filling the book of executives, anybody, advancing professional job seekers? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how many people do we know right now that are actively trying to find jobs and feel like they're just facing Everest? I'm curious to know, in terms of that filling the bucket, what sort of advice would you give them to get them into that mindset that every day can be purposeful, every day must have action and confidence in it? What sort of things would you say to them?
Well, the way that I incorporate the PEPP model into sort of everyday thinking, PEPP again is purpose plus energy plus pleasure plus profit. So to think about, with everything that you do, whether it takes you closer to or away from your purpose, whether it energizes you or drains you, whether it's pleasurable or not, and whether there's some profit or not. Now, profit might not just be money, of course. Profit might be, there might be other ways that we, other currencies for profit. But if you're doing something that, it might be that you're with people who you don't completely enjoy the company of. We unfortunately we come across people in our lives some people who light us up and who we can learn from, and other people who not so. So it might be an activity that you're doing in your job, in your career. Is that something that you really feel like you're adding value and it energizes you, or is it like, ho hum, draining? Don't like doing this thing day in, day out, month in, month out, in which case I hope that asking the PEPP question, checking in on those 4 things, purpose, energy, pleasure, and profit, that you can make a decision then. It might be that this task drains you, but you're being paid really, really well for the time being. And so it's okay to put up with it, because at least there's the profit element. But if it's none of those, if it's not taking you towards the sort of career that you want, if it's draining you, if you despise doing it and you're not being paid well, what can you do about that? How can you adjust your thinking and take some action to change at least one of those things? Because if you carry on with 4 negatives, then you're going to become sick. And
Okay, you're back on. Okay.
I'm back on. I'm not sure where I got to when it.
I think what you were saying is, with the PEPP model, if we have 4 negatives, basically, or if one of those negatives is weighing very heavily on you, or 4 you said is going to lead to sickness, one of those 4 that is potentially critical is not going to be very healthy for your career in any event. And you need to take stock of the PEPP model and say to yourself, from a purpose, from an energy, what was the next one? Purpose?
Pleasure,
energy,
and profit.
And profit. If one of those isn't, and profit doesn't have to be money. I guess the other thing, profit can be simply the fact that you're doing something that means a lot to you. I know a lot of people, it's not about the salary they earn, it's about the work that they do every day and the difference they make to society. My question to you is, personal connections and relationships, how important are they in building resilience?
Oh, very. I think if you are if you spend a lot of time around people who you don't enjoy the company of, then that in itself will bring you down at some point. So if you don't enjoy their company, if you're not learning from them, if they're toxic in some way, then it's not sustainable. Resilience is, and vitality is sort of a whole. And if you spend a lot of time around people who are negative and down, then that travels, and it's really hard to be the happy, smiley one long term. We all have situations in our lives where we're a bit down, and we're grateful for others to bolster us, and that can be in reverse. Like, when I needed help, well, I was so grateful of my friends bolstering me. But there has to be give and take. It can't be a one-way street all the time. So it's so important to be around people who energize you, who you enjoy the company of, because that energy travels, the vitality travels, whether you run your own business, whether you're an employee, whether you're a leader and you have a team of people. Everybody knows how you're feeling, because they can tell when you walk through the door whether you're, smiling and beaming. You don't have to be happy all the time if there's really yucky stuff going on. But I'm a firm believer in trying to find the good in whatever's going on, and that will carry us through and help us smooth out the troughs of the roller coaster, as I said at the beginning, so we don't have these great big dips and the big highs. If we can see the good in things, then we're more likely to be able to ride the.
What we might do, everybody, because we're obviously having technical difficulties with link up with Jo. Jo, what we might do is we might resume this conversation another time, because we're obviously having difficulties communicating with you. Can I say thank you so much? We will revisit this theme, because this is a very important theme. And I think one of the things that we were going to talk about, and we haven't quite got there, and Jo is probably listening in on what I'm saying now. In Jo's book, I think one of the things that comes across very strongly is that mental illness is not a prerequisite for building resilience, but resilience is an important piece, and building that vitality and resilience in helping to protect you from your mental health. And in fact, Jo had a quote in her book that talked about taking good care of yourself, it said, means building stores of resilience for those tough times. And that quote was by Quentin Bryce, who we all know and love. And I guess what I'd say to all of you is, you don't have to be perfect. You can be less perfect. When you go to work, you don't have to shine brightly all the time. And I'm not using my words. I'm using Jo's words. This is in Jo's book, which we obviously will put up when we're promoting this piece today. You don't have to shine brightly all the time. You do have to be you. And don't be afraid on the bad days to say, I'm not feeling great. And on the good days to say, I'm feeling fantastic. And find your own balance. Don't see it as a sign of weakness. Increasingly now, we're looking for people to be themselves, to be their authentic selves in the workplace, not to be what they expect, what they think everybody else expects them to be. So on that note, I'm going to say goodbye to you all today. Jo and I will resume this conversation again. Jo, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I just want to say thank you very much. You've been fantastic. And we will talk again. And to everybody else who's tuning in today, please pay attention to some of the really great words of wisdom that have been imparted. From me, Roisin Duffy, and from the Living Your Career show, we air every Tuesday and Thursday. And that is Brisbane noontime. So we'll see you again next week. But for now, goodbye. Thanks very much.